Okay, and welcome to the University of Lethbridge. Our university's Blackfoot name is Iniscum, meaning Sacred Buffalo Stone. The university is located in traditional Blackfoot Confederacy territory. We honor the Blackfoot people and their traditional ways of knowing and caring for this land, as well as all Indigenous peoples who have helped shape and continue to strengthen our university's community. My name is Hannah Thomas. I am the Graduate Recruitment Officer here at the university, and I'm joined today by two of our graduate students. We have Gia Janeja, who is currently in our Master's in Education Counseling Psychology program. She just started this summer, actually. And then we also joined with Michael Ose. He actually completed his Master's of Science in Physics 2023, and he's now pursuing his PhD in Theoretical and Computational Science with us. So thank you all for joining us today. We're very pleased that you were able to join us to talk about our Masters of Science program. We want to discuss what the programs entail, as well as if it is that you have any questions regarding the application process or any questions regarding the admission requirements. Feel free to drop that in the Q&A and we will answer them at the end of the presentation. So the Masters of Science program offers students the opportunity to earn a master's degree by writing a thesis and successfully completing a limited number of courses. We offer over 21 majors in our Masters of Science program. And a Master's of Science student is required to complete a minimum of 4 graduate term courses, equivalent to 12 credit hours, a thesis, and a thesis oral defense. Now, the number and details of the courses are determined in the first term with the student supervisor. So you develop your program in consultation with your supervisors. Students may complete their degrees in either a full-time or part-time capacity. Full-time students complete a 24-month program, while part-time students complete a 48-month program. Part-time students will normally complete all the required courses within the first 24 months, with the subsequent months being towards their continued research and production of the thesis. Full-time students usually complete their required courses within the first 12 months of their program, with the subsequent months towards the completion of their thesis. Now let's talk a little bit more about the admission requirements. Applicants are required to meet the following requirements. So you have to have an undergraduate degree in a related discipline from a recognized degree granting institution. You must have a minimum of 3.0 GPA on a 4-point scale based on your last 20 graded university level courses. Now, if it is that you have a previous master's degree, we will be calculating your GPA based on your master's degree. It is important to note when we're calculating your last 20 graded courses that we are also calculating courses within the term. So if, for example, you have 20 graded courses and your 20th course is in the winter term, but you have an additional 4 courses that you also completed within that term, we will be counting those 4 courses because they fall within that term to calculate your GPA. Now, all our students are required to meet the English language proficiency, and we will drop a link to that, or if GR Michael, you can drop a link to the English language proficiency page in the chat so that students can access it. If you have any questions regarding that, also feel free to drop that in the Q&A. Now, one of the most important admission requirements is that you have to secure a supervisor prior to you submitting your application. Because you build the program out with your supervisor, it is essential that you have a secured supervisor prior to the application, because your supervisor will then support your application. Now, all international students are required to meet comparable credentials based on a Canadian applicant. So your qualifications must be comparable to those of a Canadian applicant. Now, on our website, we also have a link to our international applicants based on the country in which it is that you completed your program. You will see the equivalent degree that you will be required to have to meet that requirement. Now, when submitting your application, you will be required to submit supporting documents. Now, your unofficial transcript, you will need to upload your unofficial transcript with your application, including proof of graduation for your completed degrees. And we also require you to upload any transcript for any post-bachelor work that you have completed at a university level. If any of you have any transcripts that you have completed a one course after you completed your degree, that is important for you to upload, as well as your official transcript from your degree also. Now, we do not require you to upload, to send to us, not upload, to send to us your official transcript. You can arrange to have those submitted to the registrar's office prior to registration. So we will assess your application with your unofficial transcript. And if it is that you have been successful into the program, then you can arrange to have your official transcript sent to us. Now, it is important to note that we require to have your official transcript prior to registration. So if you know that your institution takes a long time to arrange to have official transcripts sent to us, it may be better for you to have those official transcripts sent to us once you submitted the application instead of waiting, because your application will be considered incomplete if we do not receive the official transcript. So you will be on conditional acceptance if you're accepted into the program prior to us receiving your official transcript. So it is important to know how long your institution takes to send transcripts over. If it's going to take a while, then you also need to, I would recommend that you arrange to have that sent before we review your application. If it's not going to take a while and it's a short time period for the official transcript to be sent over, then we will assess your application. And if you're successful, you can arrange to have that sent to us at that time. Now, we will also need you to upload your academic CV. Now, this is important because we need to get an idea of what your academic background is, your work experience, any awards or scholarships, or any other achievements that you may have. Another important thing is references. Now, applicants to the Masters of Science program are required to submit 3 references, 2 of which must be academic. So you should have studied with at least one of your references. Professional references should be an employer or another person who has served in a supervisory capacity who can testify to your ability to succeed in an academic setting. Now, your letter of intent. Your letter of intent is your opportunity to show the program committee your passion for your proposed research, highlight your goals and objectives for seeking a graduate degree in that chosen discipline, and discuss the nature of your proposed research and how it aligns with your supervisor's expertise. You want to explain how dedicated and invested you are to your proposed graduate program, provide specific examples of key accomplishments. You want to also, very important, be concise. Include only important information. The program committee have many graduate applications to review, and so your letter of intent should generally be no more than 1 page or up to 500 words in length. Now, we briefly mentioned the English language requirement. So English is the primary language of instruction here at the University of Lethbridge. And so prior to registration, all graduate students are required to demonstrate English language proficiency to meet the demands of classroom instruction. So that includes written assignment, research, and participation in tutorials and discussions. regardless of their citizenship or country of origin, the English language proficiency must be met based on the criteria that we have in our listing. So we have dropped in the chat, I believe. So Michael and Gia, you actually, yes, dropped in the chat the English language requirement. So you guys feel free to check that out. Again, if you have any questions, drop that in the Q&A. Now, as I mentioned, it is essential that you secure a supervisor prior to you submitting your application. These programs are thesis-based, which means students work very closely with their supervisor, and so the right fit is essential for success. So you are making an informed decision about the graduate supervisor who you will be working towards throughout your program. You should begin contacting prospective supervisors as early as possible, as you may have a delayed response. And so 2 weeks prior to the application deadline is not going to be successful in securing a supervisor. You want to be thinking about it at least a term prior to the application deadline. It is recommended maybe 2 terms before, because that way if it is that supervisor that you approach don't have capacity, you have sufficient time to reach out to other supervisors. Now, when emailing a professor, it is important that you detail what it is that you want to do in terms of your research. And you also need to upload documents. You should upload your CV. And in your email, it is basically a summary of your letter of intent, where you're talking about what is the nature of the research you want to pursue and why your research is in alignment with the supervisor's expertise. So you must include previous research that you have completed, if any, and if it is that you have prepared any research questions or a topic, you want to include that in your letter of intent. It's important to ensure that you're familiar with the potential supervisor's work and their specific research interests within the field of study. Being familiar with the professor's work helps you to establish how they would be suitable to supervise you for your proposed research. Remember that your email serves as your first introduction to a potential supervisor, and as such, it is important to remain professional and respectful. Now, let's talk a little bit about the admissions criteria. Now, because the capacity of the program is limited, not all students who meet the admission requirements can be admitted. So criteria used to include for the admission include your record and your letters of recommendation, your proposed supervisor's record of scholarship, completed and current work, especially in relation to the proposed research that you want to do, the feasibility of the research in which you want to pursue, and available resources to execute that research, any financial support that you may have. And if the program committee feels that you are eligible for admission but lacking the necessary preparation, you may be admitted on a conditional basis and required to submit to also pursue additional classes. Now, it is important to note that the admission criteria is heavily dependent on the capacity, and capacity is heavily dependent on the supervisor. So if you don't have the support from a supervisor, you're not able to get in because we don't have capacity. You have to also meet the GPA requirements as well. And your research has to be something that is feasible for us to say that we can support you as well. So a little bit more about the application deadline. So if it is that you're interested in applying to the Masters of Science program, it is important to note that if you want to start in fall 2025, so that's September 2025, our application deadline is January 15th, 2025. Now, this application deadline is for both international and domestic students. If you're a domestic student, you also have another opportunity to apply with the second application deadline of May 1st, 2025. Now, this application deadline is only for domestic students, and it does exclude our addictions counseling, health sciences, and nursing program. So application deadline, January 15, 2025. That is a date by which you should have submitted your application. Now, if you're interested in starting in the summer, so that will be May 2025, or application deadline is February 1st, 2025. Now, it is important to note that there may be delays in securing a study permit if you are a international student. So we usually recommend international students to apply for the fall 2025 intake, because you will get sufficient time to secure your study permit so you can start on time. So even though you might be tempted to apply for the summer 2025, the time period in which it is that you receive notification whether or not you have been accepted in the program, and the time period when you're supposed to start the program is very short. So we are talking within like a month or two. So it's important to note that if it is that you are an international student thinking about doing this program, you may want to consider applying for the fall 2025 intake, and that is the January 15, 2025 application. If you're a domestic student, you want to start in the summer, February 1st, 2025 is available to you. Now, we also take intakes in January, or winter 2026, that's January 2026. The application deadline is May 1st, 2025, and that applies to both our international and domestic students. And if you're a domestic student, we have a second application deadline, which is October 1st, 2025. Now, all students, for the October 1st, 2025 deadline, it excludes the addictions counseling, health sciences, and nursing program. So we'll also drop the link to the application deadline within the chat as well, so that you guys can review the application deadline to see which one works. And that's why it's important that you start getting in contact with prospective supervisors early on, so that you're able to complete the application in time for the deadline. So January 15th is the date to remember. Now, how do you apply? The application is done 100% online. You upload all your documents and credentials online, as I previously mentioned. But the first thing that you should do before you do the application is that you want to do your research. You want to determine whether or not this program is the right program for you, based on the research you want to pursue. So you need to find a supervisor that will be suitable and that will offer you with the expertise that you need to successfully complete your research. Once it is that you have secured a supervisor, you want to ensure that you have met the admission requirements. So this is talking about the GPA requirements, as well as you want to ensure that you are going to submit the application prior to the application deadline. So that is step one. Step two, you prepare your supporting documents. These are your transcripts, your references, your CV, your letter of intent, and the English language proficiency. Now, your application will be considered incomplete if you do not submit all these documents prior to the application deadline. So references are required to be received before the application deadline. Something important to note for the reference, this is not a letter we're asking for. So what it is that on the application, you will submit the person's name and their email address. Our system will send them an email indicating that you have requested for them to support your application and for them to be a reference. They will be asked to complete a form. And once they complete that form, then you'll be prompted on your application to indicate that, yes, this person has completed their reference. So you want to ensure you get your references early on in the process, so that you're not waiting until the application deadline to ask persons to complete their references for you. Again, we need your CV, your letter of intent, and your proof of your English language proficiency. Now, once you have all of that, you submit your complete application package online before the application deadline. You arrange to have your official transcripts and documents sent to us prior to registration, and then you wait on the admission decision. So the department committee reviews your application and makes recommendation on admission to the program committee, and you'll be notified of your official admission status by the registrar's office no later than 10 weeks after the application deadline. So depending on the date that you apply, whichever date that's the appropriate deadline, that 10 weeks after that, no later than 10 weeks after that, you'll be notified as to the application status. Now, we've come to the end of the presentation. So if anybody has any questions, feel free to drop that in the Q&A. And I see that we do have a couple questions, and we will get going with those. So our first question is, do you have an application fee waiver? Unfortunately, we do not have an application fee waiver. All our applicants are required to pay the application fee. So it costs $140, or is it $150, I believe, for international students, and is $125 for our domestic students. We have another question. It says, as an Indian student, I want to ask about scholarship funding fees, about the term which I am eligible if I apply by December 2024. As I mentioned, we recommend international students to apply for the fall intake. So that's the September 2025 intake. So if you want to apply by December 2024, the application deadline is actually January 15th. So you will be ahead of the application deadline if it is that you want to submit your application. Again, it's important that you secure a supervisor prior to submitting your application, because your application would be considered incomplete if you do not have supervisory support. So you have to have a supervisor that has agreed that they will support your application, and then you can submit. Now, you mentioned scholarship and funding opportunities. So I will just drop the link to our funding opportunities. So we have quite a number of different funding opportunities for our students. And so once it is that you have been successfully accepted into a program, initially you will get a letter, or offer letter, indicating that we would like you to accept an offer to be a part of the program. In that letter, if you have any funding that you will be receiving for research from your supervisor, they would indicate the funding opportunities, the funding that you will receive in that letter. If it is that you have been awarding or admission awards, so we have a School of Graduate Studies admission awards that is applicable to all our students. You will be notified in that letter if it is that you have received that award as well. And then following which, you can then apply to all the awards and scholarship that we have. And I just dropped that link in the chat for you so that you can see all the awards and scholarship opportunities that we have for all our students. Now, you also made reference to the fees. So depending on which program that you're in, so I'll just bring up the fees for you, the fees page, so we can take a look at it, and I'll share my screen. Give me a moment. Let me bring that up for our Masters of Science program. So sometimes it can be a little bit confusing, the tuition schedule. So I'll just bring it up so that we can take a look at it. Just share my screen. Okay. Are we able to see the screen?
Yes.
Oh, we're seeing the wrong screen.
We can see the 23-24 fee schedule.
Oh, you can. Okay.
Yeah.
I think it came up all weird and I was like, oh, no, we're not seeing it. Okay, perfect. So yes. So regarding the fees, so we have our fees listed. So it's important to note that the tuition is the tuition, that's your base fees, but as a student, you require to pay additional program fees. And so you want to pay attention to the last column that says total. So as an international student for the first 3 terms, you are going to be looking at, for the summer term, you're paying 5,262.23, and all these figures are Canadian. And then for your fall term, you're paying 5,680, and for the spring term, it's 5,680.59. So these are all Canadian dollars. And then once you have completed your first year and completed all your required coursework, you are now going to be paying continuation fees, which is to support you completing the thesis. And so you are required to have continued registration. So you have to be registered for all 3 terms until you complete your program. So for the summer, you're paying 1,702. For the fall is 227, 63, and for the spring, that's 227.63. So if we want to do a rough, calculation, but pretty much that is what the costing will look like. So what I will also do is I will drop the link to this in the chat as well so that you can access the funding information. So let me drop the link to that in the chat. So that's the tuition, not the funding. I've dropped the link to the funding prior to, so that one was for the tuition. Now, yeah, so I think I answered all those questions. So another question is, I would like to ask a question to Gia. How can I find a potential supervisor for the Masters of Science and PhD program? Gia, you didn't need to find a supervisor for your program, but do you still want to talk a little bit about your experience? Because eventually you did have to secure a supervisor.
Yes. So for my MEd counseling program, it wasn't a requirement to get into the program, but we did have an option if I want to do a thesis. So I am planning to do a thesis in my second year of the program, and I recently secured a supervisor. I started my program in summer, but I just secured a supervisor last month from University of Lethbridge. But I would say for my program, it was a little bit flexible because I could go into other faculties and schools to find mine. But my supervisor was in education. I sent her my introductory email with my CV. I also sent my transcript, introduced myself, why I'm interested in her research. What is my sort of, not a research proposal exactly, but like what am I planning to do with her, and just to ask for her availability and see if she can meet with me, book a meeting with her. And I was fortunate enough that I found a supervisor. But for MSc and PhD over here at University of Lethbridge, we are required to get a supervisor before the admission. So I would still suggest, again, I guess we did cover this in the tips of tips for finding a supervisor, but like introducing yourself, being respectful, being polite, and yeah, just letting them know why you're reaching out to them, what interests you in their research. Um, and yeah, maybe obviously going through their research, their literature, to see if it's a good fit for your research goals. And yeah, I think starting from there, and then of course seeing how it goes.
Yeah, thank you so much for that, Gia. Michael, you actually secured a supervisor for your MSc as well as your PhD program. Do you want to talk a little bit about your journey as an international student and how you successfully secured a supervisor for both your programs?
Okay. So it has to start with going through the supervisors and then what they do. And after finding out what they do, if their research aligns with your research interest, then you kind of write a code email to the supervisor and then or the professor and add your transcript and then your resume. So the email shouldn't be that long, just a short email, and you have to explain to him or her why you're interested in his research. And then if the professor too goes through the email and then is interested to work with you, he will respond or he will get back to you. And then like they will schedule a meeting with you to have a further conversation with you to see like why you're interested in your research. And then it's not like an interview, but it's kind of like a discussion. So if the professor likes you from there, then he will give you the go ahead that apply and then use my name as one of your potential supervisors. So then that is basically how it goes. Yeah.
Thank you so much for that, Michael. All right, we have another question is, I will complete my Bachelor's of Arts in Anthropology, but I would like to pursue a Geography, Masters of Science, or Archaeology. Can I enter the MSc program with a BA? Thanks. So yeah, definitely, depending on what it is that you want to pursue in your research, you can 100% use your anthropology degree to apply for geoarchaeology, whichever one it is that based on it. So at the graduate level, it's important to know what 100% guides you is the research you want to pursue. So you want to first determine which supervisor will be the best fit for you. Based on if it is that which department they fall in, that usually then determines whether or not it is that maybe the MSc in Geo or the MSc in Archaeology might be the better major for you, because then they will be able to guide you 100% in saying, okay, if this is the research you want to do, then MSc in Geo is the better way to go, or Archaeology is the better way to go. I will also say that you do have the opportunity of actually doing an interdisciplinary research. So you can combine both your specialization. So if you want to do research that speaks to both geo and archaeology, you have the opportunity of doing in that interdisciplinary area. And you can secure co-supervisors within both departments that will be able to work together to assist you for that. So yes, there is opportunity for you to use your BA to apply for a MSc program. Just all depends on the research that you want to do. All right, somebody says, my name is Joseph from Ghana. I wanted to find out if an application fee waiver is tied to this webinar. Unfortunately not, Joseph. Maybe next time we'll try to see if we can get approval to do an application fee waiver for this webinar. Definitely something I can suggest, and we will see how it goes. But unfortunately, not this time around. We do not have an application fee waiver draw. Somebody asks, do you have scholarship opportunity available for international students? Yes, we do. I did drop the link to our scholarship opportunities in the chat, so feel free to check those out. Somebody asked, what's the proper time to send official documents? So as I mentioned before, we do assess your application based on your unofficial transcript, but we do require your official transcript as well as your official English language proficiency documents. So that's your test results if you are required to submit that prior to the registration. So we recommend that you try to submit those official documents when you're doing your application, so that we don't have a delay in receiving them, because if we don't get them in time for registration, your offer will be rescinded because you will be on conditional acceptance. So the sooner you can get it over to us, the better. Usually Once you've had a discussion with a supervisor, they usually ask for your unofficial transcript. And if it is that they determine, okay, based on what I'm seeing, your GPA looks good, your funding opportunities are there, I would say at that point in time, arrange to have the official document sent to us. If it is that they are not sure whether or not you're gonna meet the 3.0 GPA, you can wait on the assessment before you have the official document sent over to us. But once you have that support from the supervisor, I just say go for it, because usually that's the biggest hurdle in terms of getting into the program. Okay, somebody else asks, are students from Bangladesh University of Engineering exempted from the English language requirement? Okay, so that's a great question. So we actually do have a list of different institutions on our website that has exemption from the English language proficiency. And so I will just bring that up so we can all take a look at it together. So you can see what that list of institutions look like. So just give me a moment. Let me bring that information up for you. Let me share my screen. Okay, Gia, we're able to see the screen, right? Yeah, that's good. Perfect. All right, so this is our English language proficiency requirement for all our graduate students. So as I mentioned, for students that successfully complete their master's or bachelor's degree from a recognized institution, we have a listing here. So it does link out. And when you take a look at it, we can determine whether or not your institution falls on one of those lists. So you said Bangladesh University of Engineering and Technology. Yep. So it is listed clear as day here that you are exempted from the English test. So you just indicate your institution in which you attended, and as well as supply a copy of your actual degree when you're uploading your official documents. And we use that as verification to say that you do meet that requirement. Perfect. So I'll stop sharing. So somebody asks, could you please explain about the transcript? In a scenario, I filled the application form first, submit official transcripts later after application last date. Yeah, I think you pretty much understand it. So as I mentioned, we do not require your official transcript to assess your application. So unofficial transcript. So this is what you will get from your institution. Usually it has unofficial, like, water printed all over it, and you upload that to your application. And we use that to assess to determine whether or not you meet that GPA requirement. That is also something that you will probably share with your prospective supervisor as well, to determine whether or not it is they think you have the necessary academic background to pursue the research that you are interested in, and whether or not they can support you. So when it is that we actually need your official transcript is if it is that you have received an offer letter indicating that you have been successful in your application. Once you have accepted that offer, you need to send us your official transcript, and you have up until when you're registering for the program. That's the cutoff deadline for the official transcript. So to assess your application, to determine whether or not you get into the program, we don't need your official transcript. We just need your unofficial transcript. Once you have been offered acceptance into the program and you accept that offer, that is when we require your official transcript. All right. Would you speak about the education related all expenses during study period for an international student? I'm not quite certain I understand the question. Would you speak about education related all expenses during the study period for international? I don't know, Gia, can you give me any clarification? I'm not sure how to.
If it's, I think we did talk about, we've put in a link about our fee structure and we talked about that. If it's other than that, if it's like, supplies and books and textbooks, housing, I'm not sure because that's not education like related, but it's maybe an
Okay.
expense.
Well, if you can drop some clarification on that question, we'd appreciate it. Because I'm not 100% certain of what you're asking right now. Okay, good evening. Greetings from Dom. Dom Rep. Hey, good evening. I have two questions. If I graduated from an English-speaking country, in this case, the USA, do I need to provide proof of English language proficiency? So as I mentioned, there are exemptions to the English language proficiency, and one of them is the country in which that you actually pursued your degree. So I will share my screen again so we can take a look at it together so you can see where it is. All right, so again, this is the English language proficiency page. And if you scroll all the way to the end, these are the recognized countries. So for the purposes of administering the English language proficiency requirement, the University of Lethbridge recognizes the following countries where primary language is English. And you will see the United States of America is one of those countries. So once it is that you completed your bachelor's degree in at a US degree granting institution, then yes, you would meet the English language proficiency and you would not be required to do a test. All right. Somebody asks, I have a degree in agriculture. What similar courses does your school have, and are funding opportunities joined? Oh, she joined a little late. Yeah, no worries. So in terms of the degree in agriculture, we do offer a Master's of Science in Agricultural Studies. We also have, let me just bring up that page of our, so we can share it. Actually, you know what I'll do? I'll bring where we have it posted on our website. So that way you can see all our offerings that we offer in our Masters of Science program. And then we can drop the link to that. I don't know if I had shared did we share the English language requirement link already? I believe we did, right? Yeah. I'll just drop that again. But for the Masters of Science programs, let me just bring up the link once again. And we'll briefly take a look at all the majors that we actually offer. So we do have our agricultural biotechnology. That's one that you may find interesting to you. We also have agricultural studies. That's something based off your interest. So this is our Masters of Science page, and it lists all the different majors that we do offer. So just to reiterate, if your bachelor's in agriculture does have you the opportunity for a couple programs, depending on the area in which it is that you actually want to pursue or what kind of research you're looking to pursue. You might be interested maybe in biochemistry or even environmental science. Geography might be something that you fall in under. So it all depends on your research, but you do have a lot of opportunities in terms of majors that you can pursue with your agricultural degree. And I will say that we are located in Southern Alberta. So there is a lot of research grants that are available to students that are interested in doing agriculture, because we are heavy in agriculture in Southern Alberta. And so a lot of our students within those programs get grants from the city. They get grants from the government of Alberta to pursue research within agriculture. So if that is the area that you're interested in, it is very, it's a popular major, and that's something that you can definitely consider in terms of getting funding opportunities for. So somebody asked, I asked the faculty and I want to enroll in the MSc in computer science, but they require me to secure a supervisor. How can the faculty to help me with this? I've tried to send emails to many professors, but haven't gotten yet any response yet. Is there a suggestion? Yeah, so we talked a lot about this in our tips on securing a supervisor webinar, where the faculty talked a lot about it is important that you are clear, you're professional, you're concise in terms of when you're approaching supervisors. A lot of times they get a lot of questions. They get a lot of prospects from persons approaching them to be their supervisor. And if you have not properly formulated your email to reflect what it is that you're trying to pursue, what research area you're interested in, the fact that you have done your research to determine that their research expertise align with the research that you want to pursue, a lot of times you will not receive a response. And they don't recommend that you bombard professors in terms of emailing multiple professors at once. You want to ensure that you approach the professor that's the best fit. If you have formulated your email properly, you have included your CV, you have expressed your interest, you have showed that you have done research on the professor and how there's an alignment between you and that person and how they can assist you in pursuing the research, why you want to do that research and why you think that they would be a good fit, then more than likely you would have received a response. So my recommendation to you is to go back to the drawing board and basically revise your email to come up with a better strategy as to how best to approach the supervisor. I have dropped the link in the chat about tips on securing a supervisor. Definitely review that and ensure that you are doing all the tips that we have painstakingly worked very hard on generating so that you know exactly what it is that you need to be doing in order to be successful in securing a supervisor. So that's what I would say. I would definitely say go back to the drawing board, reword, formulate a different approach, do your research and find a supervisor that's the best fit in terms of the research you want to pursue. Somebody says, thank you for your previous answer. Can you provide a link to the interdisciplinary program that you mentioned? Oh, okay. So we do have an interdisciplinary, multidisciplinary major, but what I was actually referring to was the fact that you can actually pursue research across disciplines. So we are a liberal education university. So one of our major points is that we allow students to do research in multiple disciplines. So at that level, what you would do is that you first want to determine which supervisor would be your main supervisor. You approach that supervisor and then you start talking to that person about the fact that, hey, you know, I'm actually thinking about there might be an opportunity for me to incorporate this area in my research. Would you be open to the idea of me getting research assistance, having a co-supervisor, and then they will let you know and say, oh, you know, this prof might be a really good fit. Let's have a discussion with them to determine whether or not it is that we can all work together to help you execute your research. So that's what I meant when I mentioned interdisciplinary program. Not necessarily you pursuing the multidisciplinary program, but more you being able to get that lib-ed approach where you are able to use experts from different disciplines to pursue the research you want to do. All right, somebody asked, I am planning to apply before the 15th of January, but unfortunately, the SDS immigration is closed. So what do you recommend for which term shall I apply for? Not sure I don't know what SDS immigration is.
So it was like a fast track getting your study permit or the student visa program sort of, and I think recently that has been closed for some countries.
Okay.
So it's like regular track now. You will probably get your study permit, but it's just going to take longer, basically.
Okay, so if that fast track avenue is closed, then applying for the January 15 deadline to start in fall 2025 would be your best bet. If it is that you're not able to secure a fast track study permit to start in January or to start in the summer, if you apply by January 15, 2025 to start in September 2025, that's more than sufficient time for you to get to secure a study permit without the fast track method. Now, I will say that IRCC, that's the immigration body, is implementing a lot of changes in terms of what the application process looks like for study permits, and they're putting a lot of restrictions on this application process. So it's important that you keep up to date on all these restrictions, that you are aware of what that looks like. It is gonna affect a lot of international students, and so keep in the know. Definitely check out the IRCC website as often as you can. But once you submit your application, you do have the opportunity to defer your start date once. So say, for example, you applied for the January 15 deadline to start in September 2025, and you still were not able to secure your study permit for September 2025 after you received your acceptance, then you have the opportunity to defer to the next term. And so you only get to defer once, and that's why you want to give yourself sufficient time. So if it is that you are successful in the application and you did not get the study permit in time, you can defer to start at a later term. So hopefully that helps you in terms of giving you some kind of reprieve. We do recognize that with the changes of IRCC, a lot of this part of the process with the study permit is extremely unpredictable. We are not even 100% how to maneuver the new changes yet, because it's all very new and there's still new changes coming on board. So I would recommend that you definitely keep in the know so that you are able to maneuver the process. Somebody asks, how do I provide official documents if I apply? Excellent question. So I will just bring up on our page actually how you submit your supporting documents. So let me share my screen with you so you can see how you go about submitting your official documents to us. So as you can see, this is our supporting documents page. So the first thing is important to note, when you're doing your official transcript, you're gonna arrange to have your university send your official transcript to the registrar's office at this address. So it will be mailed to us in a sealed institution envelope. So that is how you will submit your official transcript. For the English language proficiency, you will upload your test results to us in the application. So this is where you will send your official transcript, and the English language proficiency is something that you will upload your test results to us. All right. I will drop the link to this page as well in the chat about our supporting documents, so you all can take a review of it to see how that will be done. All right, next question. If we sent email to the faculty members and we did not receive email from them, but we meet the requirements, do we have a chance of getting accepted? No. One of the admission requirements is that you have to secure a supervisor. If you don't secure a supervisor, your application will be considered incomplete. So you have to ensure you secure a supervisor prior to submitting your application. Somebody asked, I received a bachelor's degree from Bangladesh Agriculture University and a MS from Haji Mohammed Danish Science and Technology University in Bangladesh. The medium of instruction was English. During both degrees, am I eligible to waive my English language proficiency? Great question. So let's see if your institution is on our page, and I'll share my screen again. So this is a list of our different institutions. So you mentioned Bangladesh Agriculture University. So yes, that is here. And then you also mentioned Haji Danish Science and Technology University. So I'm not seeing where you got your, and you said MS, so I'm assuming that's a master's. I'm not seeing the university listed here in which you received your master's. So I am not 100% certain. What I would recommend that you do is if you're able to successfully secure a supervisor, and you are ready to submit your application, I'd recommend that you email us to confirm whether or not it is that you need to do the English language proficiency tests. And then our admissions team will let you know at that point in time. But don't approach us prior to you securing your supervisor. Once you have the supervisor and all the other documentation and you're still not sure, and because we're not sure about the English language proficiency, you can email us at that point in time. And then our admissions team will assess, because your undergraduate degree is approved as an English granting institution. So we just want to confirm whether or not the master's degree is recognized. So at that point in time, we will let you know, but I would recommend that you definitely secure a supervisor first. That's the first step. Once you have that, then you can send us an email for us to determine whether or not it is that you do meet the requirement. All right, so one more question is, do I have to apply for funding? I'll just stop sharing. There we go. Do I have to apply for funding separately, or does funding automatically comes with my admission? So as I mentioned, we have a admissions award that all our students, once they're successful into a graduate program with us, are automatically eligible for. The program committee evaluates your application. Usually this is heavily tied into your GPA. So students with like a 3.5 and higher GPA are often receive grants from this admissions award, and you will be notified in your offer letter if you get that. Now, the higher the GPA, the more opportunity you have for funding. That is the crucial key to getting funding. You have to have a strong GPA. So I say 3.5, but we're looking at a 3.6 and higher. You want to ensure that that GPA is strong and up there, and that's the best way for you to be sure that you can get funding. So you can apply to funding after you've been successful, but you're usually evaluated immediately once you submit your application, and our graduate committee determines whether or not you get that admission awards. And then from there, you can move on. So yeah, thank you all so much for joining us at this webinar and for asking all these great questions.